What's up everybody, Renfail here and back again with more Rogue Trader. Today we're finally updating our beta guide on which class should I play. They've changed the names since the last version of this video I did, which was during the beta period. And we now have all of the main classes, subclasses, and ultimate here, the Exemplar, to take a look at and discuss as we work our way through which one's going to be the best class for you. Now, my guides are designed for new players, thus the Ultimate Beginner's Guide title to them. So if you're looking for something a little more advanced that dives into each one of these classes in very specific manners, that's not going to be this guide. That's later on in the playlist, so you can make sure to dive into those as we get to them. But this is definitely sorted out for new players who might be new to Warhammer, who might be new to Rogue Trader, who might be new to Owlcat games, and you're looking to figure out what do I want to play, because this is a game that has 6-person party teams. So you can actually have 6 people in your party, and there's a great range of NPC companions that you can bring into the table depending on what you're playing. So we're going to go through all of these this morning, starting with the 4 classes that you can choose at character creation, and then breaking that down into the 6 you can choose from at level 16, and then of course the ultimate down there at the end once you get to level 36. Now, if you've never watched one of my guides before, a couple of things to note. One is that I don't focus on combat during these beginner's guides. Combat is shown in live streams and in each individual class guide that we do as we continue to play the game. And so you'll see all the combat in those videos. Second is that, of course, if you're new here, you need to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. We do daily streams at 5:30 a.m. and 8 p.m. Central, multi-streaming on YouTube and Twitch, with anywhere between 5 and 7 videos per day going live on YouTube for the game guides, the movie guides, movie reviews, all the gaming news things we do, the different games we play, and it's a lot. So check all of the playlists out. Join our Discord. Without further ado, let's dive into the first class on the list. Now at level 1 in Rogue Trader, you get your choice between 4 different classes, or archetypes as they are called here, archetypes if you prefer to pronounce it that way. The warrior, the officer, the operative, and the soldier. The warrior is going to be the first one we talk about today, and it's a very standard melee-based character. But if you haven't played Rogue Trader yet, one of the beautiful parts about this game is that as you level up, you're going to get the option to choose between a ton of available skills, talents, and abilities, which allow you to really define your warrior. And so you could literally have 6 different warriors in the group, all of whom play dramatically different based on the skills that they've taken as they've leveled up, and also based upon your home world and your origin. We've talked about that a little bit more in the origin overviews and the homeworld overviews, but each one of these options, the homeworld and origin, allows you to choose specific things that can dictate how your warrior is going to be played. A good example of this is choosing to take the Psyker origin, because that will allow you to then have Psyker abilities while being a warrior. It sounds weird, I know, because it's like origins are kind of like backgrounds, which are also kind of like classes in this game, and it's just extra layers to the complexities of what's going on with the actual classes here. So just bear in mind that the warrior, like any of the other classes in this game for the 4 base classes, can be played in a variety of different ways. So if you just want to be a straight up melee warrior who's up there with like 2-handed weapons, bashing things, you can. You want to be a guy who has a sword in one hand and a pistol in the other and be a privateer, you could do that. You want to be a guy who has sword and a pistol and Psyker abilities like Heinrichs, who you're going to meet in Chapter 1, who joins your party, you can do that. There are a lot of different ways. You can even be, especially if you go like the biomancy option, you could be like the paladin of your party if you want to spec that way. There are tons of ways to spec the warrior, so don't think that it's only related to just being only melee. Just keep in mind that it is a primarily melee based class, so your focus is going to be on being up front in the middle of combat. And so when you look at the keystone feature for the character, it's called Charge. So this is an ability that moves you in a straight line to launch a melee attack against the target, and you can extend the range of Charge a little bit through different specs as you level up your character. But that's the core ability for the for the warrior. Then later on you'll get Endure, which allows you to reduce damage coming into you. So again, the warrior is all about being up front and taking damage. Even if you spec him more towards being like a psyker build or a hybrid with some ballistic damage, you're still going to be up front and taking the bulk of damage for your party. So that's something to keep in mind. And then your ultimate ability is Daring Breach, which is really cool. It restores all your AP and MP and allows you to run around the battlefield with an agility bonus, doing additional attacks once you have built up enough momentum to trigger Daring Breach. It's really cool. So that is the essence of the warrior. It's going to be the foremost military-based character who's up front and personal on the front lines. That's the way that character is played. The officer is one of the more complex classes to play in this game, and I don't actually recommend it for new players unless you want to play around with it first, because it's not like the others. So the warrior, the operative, and the soldier are all based on doing some type of damage during combat. Like you're specifically there to do things to the enemies to take the enemies out, right? But the officer, on the other hand, uses willpower and the fellowship's characteristics to specifically direct your companions and control them during combat. So you do get an attack based on your weapon, whether that's a melee weapon or a ranged weapon, but all of your abilities are based on controlling your party members, doing single target buffs, rescuing allies, adding momentum, and doing things like mending reality and removing veil degradation during combat. And if you want to know more about veil degradation, I've got a quick tip video out explaining that and showing an officer in the middle of battle removing veil degradation from the combat scenario to make it a safer place so that we don't have demons propping through any reality. So it's a little more complex than the other classes. Their keystone ability, is called Bring It Down and Voice of Command. So Voice of Command, you force an ally to push themselves, increasing their characteristics for 1 round. And then all of the officer's abilities can be applied to the target from any distance. Then they have this thing called Bring It Down, where you're immediately granting an ally an extra turn with no action points. So essentially, when it's my turn, I can look at the battlefield and say, all right, my melee guy has 3 characters around him right now. I want to target him, bring it down. It's then going to switch to him, and he's going to get to do an attack on those 3 targets that have surrounded him. Now, he doesn't get any action points with Bring It Down, but he does movement points, but he does get that the action immediately. So he can't move, but he can hit those 3 with an AoE. However, if I see that its targets spread about and I need something that's more ranged, I'm going to go to my soldier and I'm going to say, Soldier Boy, go ahead and do some ranged abilities over there, because he doesn't need to move, he can fire from anywhere. And maybe it's maybe I need to do something different and I need to do debuffs or things of that nature. It's all about figuring out what characters are at your disposal in the party, and with 5 other players, 5 other party members in your group, you have a lot of options when it comes to picking a way to sway the tide of battle. You also will eventually get to Finest Hour, which then gives your ally a full turn with all their action points and movement points, just as if it was actually their turn, which is a great way to get a little bit of extra oomph out of your party members. And just like all the other ones, you can choose to spec your officer in a variety of different ways, and you could theoretically have more than 1 officer in your party, although I would argue that you probably don't need more than 1 officer in your party. 2 would be the max that I would choose, and that's only if you're going to be going the specialized route and getting down into the Grand Strategist, because having a couple of Grand Strategists in the party, or having 1 Master Tactician and 1 Grand Strategist, could be beneficial, but those are more related to the specialty classes that you get at level 16 as opposed to the starting classes. So just remember, with the officer, it's all about commanding the other members in your party and not what you necessarily can do during a combat scenario, because your turn is literally about how can I manipulate the other party members in my party to do things in this round, as opposed to me directly. Next up is the Operative, who used to be called the Adept during beta. And essentially, Adepts it's about debuffing the mobs. So their focus is on single attacks, defense penetration, area debuffs, and firing position, so making sure you're getting into a good position from ranged. Now, operatives can also, because they could focus on single attacks, like with the warrior, you have a lot of different ways that you could spec your operative depending on homeworld, origin, and then the abilities that you're choosing as you go around the wheel here and choose levels 1 to 15, all of your abilities. So if I can give a good example of this without spoiling any of the story elements of the game, you get a couple of operatives in your group just by following the storyline. One is Pascal, and the other one is Adira. Both of these characters are extremely different. Adira is a diviner psyker, or a diviner, however you want to pronounce that. So she does a lot of, like I would say, debuffing to the mobs, right? And her focus is on being at range. Whereas Pascal is a up close and personal operative who has abilities that are more aligned with him being a tech priest and being up close in the thick of combat, using his melee weapon to do AoE and do all sorts of AoE debuffs on the mobs. So you can have operatives be melee or ranged, but it is really about putting yourself where you need to be to do the most amount of debuffs and destruction on the enemies. So their primary keystone ability is called Analyze Enemies. This allows you to target one enemy within 10 cells and immediately gain what's known as an exploit against that target. Now, exploits, this is where things get a little crazy. So an exploit essentially is something where if you have an exploit on a target, you deal more damage to that target based upon your perception bonus, and that damage is increased by 10% for each exploit that you have on the target. An attack removes all exploits from the target, so you could have more than one type of exploit on a target at any given time. And most of the abilities that the operative have, once you get into the depth of this character as it continues to expand, are based upon leveraging the exploits that a mob has on them to do lots of different things. So as an example, expose weakness is one of the first big things that you're going to get at level 3, which allows you to remove all exploits from the target to decrease their dodge, parry, and armor until the start of the operative's next turn. But then you're going to go down through here and you're going to find out that, oh, well, as I level up, there's a lot of other abilities that I'm going to get, and then you'll get this one eventually, which is your heroic opportunity, essentially, which is your dismantling attack, which allows you to inflict an exploit on all of the enemies in combat, then make a free attack against that target, which always hits, and until the end of combat, that target suffers a negative 30% penalty to dodge and a 30% penalty to armor. It's great for boss fights, but it does deploy an exploit on all targets on the battlefield, which is really fun. And then you get down in here to, where we find it here, available abilities. You're going to get into other things like joint analysis. You can remove exploits and deal and bonus more damage. You can look for perfect spot, which gives you a 25% cover efficiency, 15 perception, 15% ballistic skill. You can do intimidation, where you can hit an intimidation on the first attack that you do, and then all enemies in a radius around that target suffer these debuffs. There's also tactical knowledge, which allows you to remove an exploit from each enemy, and it's really cool. So there's lots of ways to use the operative, but the key thing here with the operative is to remind yourself that they are mostly about analyzing the battlefield, figuring out who needs to be debuffed, and strip buffs from that target, inflict weaknesses on that target, or inflict weaknesses on large groups of targets, so that you can then do more effective AoE damage or single target damage depending on the situation. There is nothing wrong with having more than one operative in your group. I would suggest, I think the group that I'm running with right now I like a lot. I've got one primary tank, I've got 2 soldiers, 2 operatives, and 1 officer, which leads us to the next class that we want to talk about in this video, which is the soldier. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload, or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. The soldier's a ranged character. It's that simple. This is the one that I'm playing through my first playthrough. It's a heck of a lot of fun. Your abilities that you get are all focused on basically making yourself do more damage with the weapons that you have, and the types of attack that you have at your disposal depend on the types of weapons you're using. So some weapons do single target damage, like the sniper rifle. Others, like plasma pistols, can do area effect targets, where you can do a literal like grid-based area effect. Others do burst damage, where you'll pick like a direction and you'll fire a burst in that direction. You'll also get things like shotguns, which do cone damage. So the types of weapons you're using dictate the types of attacks you have. But there's also something else to factor in, which is the types of damage that you're doing, because there's bolt weapons, solid projectile weapons, there's plasma weapons, there's flame weapons, there's lots of different types of weapons to choose from in this game. So when you're looking at how do you want to do damage, it's going to mostly be depending on what type of weapon you want to use. And this is why, like, I have two soldiers in my group. I have Argenta and my main character, and they both do dramatically different things in combat. Because my guy is more focused on being a sniper, and she's more focused on being a, pray and spray with her AoEs. And it's a lot of fun. I love this class. And it's one of the only class really that out of the gate gets 2 attacks per turn. Because normally the way this works is you move, you do an attack, and then you're done. But the core ability for a soldier is this thing called run and gun, which allows you to then, so you move, do your attack, then you can trigger run and gun. Your next attack costs 1 AP less and doesn't cast its attack limit per turn, and you gain a few extra movement points, so you can move a little extra. However, you do get a debuff when you use it called Winded, and it suffers a -10 penalty to ballistic skill. But later on, you're going to get this thing called Revel in Slaughter, which allows you to then add additional bonuses, and it removes the Winded effect. So this is a really cool way to counter what you just did and be like, all right, I'm gonna move, I'm gonna shoot, I'm gonna use my run and gun, I'm going to move and shoot again, and then I'm going to use Revel in Slaughter, assuming that you can use it, and get rid of the Winded effect and be ready to go next time around. Firearm Mastery is the ultimate, and it's much like the Daring Breach the fighters get, in the sense that when you pop it, you gain the ability to make a number of extra attacks equal to the weapon's rate of fire, and they don't cost any action points. So you don't necessarily get a bunch of movement, but you do get the ability to have a bunch of free attacks, essentially. And it's depending on the weapon speed that you have, the rate of fire. And the really cool thing is that until the end of your turn, each first attack against a new enemy is an automatic critical hit. So the most efficient way to use Firearm Mastery is when you have 4 or 5 targets on the field, you pop this bad boy and you just go boom, 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 and you hit all of them in a row so that you can get a crit hit off each one and do a significant chunk of damage. It's a great class. It's an easy class to play because it is just ranged, and it's about just running around the battlefield and just shooting pew 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 as you go around. It's really, really cool. Now at level 16, you're going to notice that it's locked right now because we're in character creation at the moment. At level 16, you're going to get access to the subclasses in the game, or the specialty archetypes. So we have Assassin, Vanguard, Bounty Hunter, Master Tactician, Grand Strategist, and Arch Militant. Now we're getting into things that are a little bit more advanced for a beginner's guide, so I'm not going to be diving into the specifics of all of these different specialty classes, because they're not for the beginners. This is when you're getting deeper into the game. The key that you have to remember here, and this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to when you're starting to plan which class should you play out of the gate, which archetype do you want to play, is every time you hover over one of these, it's going to show you the 3 types of subclasses or specialty archetypes that you can choose from. So this is where things start to get really fun, because all of these do different things, right? So we can hover over these and look at like the Assassin as an example. The Assassin has something called Seek the Opening. This is the keystone ability. So this is layering on top of what you already have. And this is a single target ability. It's an opening for each enemy on one of the enemy's sides, and it allows you to do some additional wounds damage and some other stuff. So this is where things get really complex with Rogue Trader, and this is where I would argue that once you get to level 16 and you're really diving into the meat of the game, because I think it goes to level 50 if I'm not mistaken. I'm still not to the cap yet. The specialty classes that you get here are dramatically different from the primary classes that you start the game with. So as an example, in my group, I have my primary soldier is spec'd as a bounty hunter, because the bounty hunter is, if you go look at this, it allows you to do this ability called Hunt the Prey. And whenever you kill a target that's marked as prey, you get a stackable bonus until the end of combat, which allows you to do a lot of different things. And there's different tiers. So how many of those stacks you get, it really does impact how your character is going to go throughout the combat scenario. And they get new ultimate abilities in each one of these subclasses as well. So in this case, the bounty hunter is going to get Wild Hunt, which simultaneously makes several attacks equal to the number of prey that you have marked in combat. They always a hit. It's always a hit, and it always scores a critical hit, and it is based on line of sight. But this is where when you're planning which class do you want to play out of the gate, pay attention, just hover over each one of these options, and it's going to show you the 3 types of subclasses that you can choose from at level 16. And that'll help you dictate, perhaps, how you're going to be speccing your primary class, what abilities, what talents, what skills are you going to be taking while you're leveling up 1 to 15 based upon the choices that you want to make at level 16. Now, the level 36 option is less confusing because once you get to level 36, all classes and subclasses, all the archetypes and specialty archetypes go to one place, and that's the Exemplar. And once you get through here, you have a whole nother slew of abilities and ways that you can continue to spec your character. And this is essentially, it just says here, I like the description here. Mere survival in the grim darkness of the far future is no easy task to thrive in it. It's next to impossible, but some manage to go above and beyond and become exemplars. So it says here, after completing their 2nd tier archetype, characters gain access to the 3rd tier archetype, which has a unique progression path. This is their chance to pick up more abilities and talents from the first 2 previously mastered archetypes, improve their characteristic and skills, and even further gain additional action points and select 5 new talents from a specialty list. So the key here is that the core focus is going to be on choosing additional abilities and talents from your previous archetypes, as well as new exemplar talents. So this is more advanced, because if you can think of it, it's kind of like a reverse pyramid in the sense where you're going down, where you're choosing your primary, then you're choosing your secondary, and then eventually funneling into your tertiary, which is essentially just a refinement of the first 2 choices you made. So you can think of the 2nd tier as the first refinement, and this 3rd tier as the 2nd refinement to really further define the way that you're specifically playing your class. So if you're playing a soldier, bounty hunter, that character is going to be further defined once you get to Exemplar. If you're playing a soldier, arch militant, that's going to be further defined by the Exemplar. If you're playing a warrior, vanguard, that'll be further defined, so on and so forth. So that's the sort of top-down overview of how these subclasses and the Exemplar work, also called, the 2nd tier archetypes here. That's definitely more advanced, and if you really want to break it down, we're going to be getting into the class guides for all of the individual archetypes as we get deeper into this game. So I've already done beta guides for the warrior, officer, operative, and soldier back when they were called, fighter, leader, adept, and marksman. And I'm doing new guides right now for launch. So make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update as I continue to work my way through this game. This is the primary game I'm playing for the month of December, so hopefully you've been enjoying the playthroughs and all the guides that have been coming out. Again, I focus mostly on newbie guides and beginner's guides. We do eventually get into some advanced stuff, But I do like to focus on the new things because, like many people, I came into the game new, didn't know anything about Warhammer, and I've been having a blast. So if you found this guide useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Daily streams happen at 5:30 a.m. and 8 p.m. Central Time. I multi-stream on YouTube and Twitch, but the day-to-day stuff happens on YouTube with all the game guides, movie reviews, TV show reviews, gaming news articles, and all of the other games we play, and we play a lot of different games. So check all those out, check out the Discord, and I'll see everybody in the next video or live stream. Till then, stay safe, happy gaming out there, everybody.